Hey, happy Thursday. We're coming down to the end of October. What a time it is. Weather's changing round about us, and can't help but think that winter is pressing closer and closer. Maybe there's good news to you. Maybe not. I don't know. But here we are, and we're here on another Thursday. I hope it's a great Thursday for you, and I'm glad that you're taking a moment to listen to this or to be with me for just a little while. And so, as I say, come on into my little world for a moment. I want to think about a word today and how we take on that word. The word is perfect. Yeah, we like that word. That's a good word. It's a word we use once in a while. Say, so and so is just perfect. This person is just perfect. My wife is perfect. The car is perfect. Where we live, the weather, the food. We use the word perfect occasionally to describe something that we really like. We like the way it is. But if we really thought about what we're telling people when we say that, James writes in that short epistle that is so packed with so many things. He writes, in the midst of trials, we count it a joy because of what it does in our lives. And notice what he says, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. That's verse 3 of chapter 1. He says it produces patience. Then in verse 4, but let patience have its perfect work, complete work, full work, absolute work. Let it have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. There's a song or two that comes to mind when I think about that, but we'll share those at another time. The idea of perfect means I couldn't imagine anything else that could possibly be added most of the time in our thinking. But in perfect, we have very personal scopes about it, personal ideas about it. And from generation to generation, the idea of perfect is, what's a perfect human being? In 1985, the actor and actress John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis starred in 1985 in a movie called Perfect. It was in the midst of the aerobics craze in America and how there were aerobic studios everywhere and everyone was practicing because they wanted to develop that perfect body. So if you looked just this way, you'd be perfect. If you were shaped just this way, if you ridded yourself of anything that took away from that particular look and that particular image, basically it failed because somewhere along the line we realized we couldn't all look like that. It's kind of hard if you're a pear-shaped person to invert that pear and turn it around and look just the opposite. And a lot of us are not willing to do that. Quite often we're not capable of doing that. We could get into genetics and all of that comes into play in all this, but the idea of the perfect body, maybe we hear the sounds of the song of Miss America being sung and say, there it is, that's the perfect. Here she is, Miss America. Is that perfect? So many measurements left out in that. Because the idea of perfect is enhanced in James' statement because he says that you may be perfect, complete. And really the idea from the original language is the idea of it's complete, it's full, it's got everything it needs. And maybe that varies from person to person. Maybe we have an idea about everything that's involved and everything that's needed that differs from the next person down the way. So perfect is not an absolute, is it? I was thinking about the song from the group Alabama. You may recognize the song. If you're an aficionado, that was a lot harder to say than it was to think aficionado of their music, and they've had some good music and so forth through the years. But here's the song as it says, sometimes her morning coffee's way too strong. And sometimes what she says all wrong. But right or wrong, she's there beside me like only a friend would be. And that's close enough to perfect for me. Skip a verse and come down a little bit further. It says, she kisses me each morning and smiles her sleepy smile. And she don't have to say it. I can see it in her eyes. Don't you worry about my woman and what you think she ought to be. She's close enough to perfect for me. In all honesty, most of the time when we think about perfect, it is a subjective conclusion, if you get what I mean. In other words, it suits us. One person chooses a mate and you find out that that person is not, in every sense of the word, perfect. But like the song says, you look at him, you look at her, and you recognize, yeah, she's got flaws, she makes mistakes. He's not everything that he could possibly be, but he or she suits me. I'm afraid that sometimes we become dissatisfied with people, with events, with things. And there is some good to some of that. It pushes invention, ingenuity, and so forth to find and develop new things and new opportunities, build on things that were of the past. We wouldn't advance if we didn't believe we could get better at some things. But when we find ourselves within a situation, when we find ourselves tied to people, do we just dump them? Do we just move on because we find that they have a flaw? I've often asked, at what point do you dump your family? You find out pretty young that they're imperfect. As a little child, we may think our parents are absolutely the very best things that could ever be. Your dad is the richest, more powerful man on the face of the earth. Your mother is the most beautiful woman and the greatest cook or whatever. You know, maybe those are old-fashioned ideas, but you understand what I mean. And then as you get older, you find out, maybe they're not infallible. Maybe not the strongest, richest, maybe not even the best cook. But as the song says, close enough to perfect. Because when we look at it, isn't it more about your willingness to be? A young couple I was talking to several years ago, planning to get married, and asking them why they were getting married, of course, the common answers came out. And one of them said to me, well, what purpose do you think marriage serves? And I said, there are a lot of purposes. But one of the things is to make up for what is lacking in the other person. You know, when God created the first two individuals, he looks at it and he says, it's not good for man to be alone. So he created one to be a support system, a help. And so they become a part of one another, a help to one another, two becoming one flesh. The idea we become a part of one another so that we can be stronger, better. Neither one of them complete without the other. There we find it. We fulfill the role that's needed for the other person. What the other person doesn't or can't do, the first person does, or vice versa. You got it. You understand what I'm saying. So there it is. Close enough to perfect. What works? What fulfills what it needs to do? James says, let patience have its complete journey so that you can be perfect, full, everything you need to be, complete, and lacking in nothing. Lacking nothing. Doesn't mean there won't be flaws, won't find those warts along the way, but it does mean you're what I need, and you fulfill what I need. That's the idea of perfect. I think let's look at one another with a little bit different eye. Instead of looking at them and saying, oh man, I wish you could be like so-and-so, or I wish you could be better than you are. Or noticing the flaws and pushing away, saying, yeah, you may make your mistakes and you may not get everything right and you may not be, well, whatever, fill in the blank. But like the song from Alabama says, you're close enough to perfect because of what you do for me. There it is. So today, let's strive to see people and build that perfect image in our minds and our ideas about one another. Hey, I'm glad you were with me today. I'm glad we could share a few thoughts. I hope it's worthwhile in your mind. I hope you enjoy your day and the changing of the seasons, and let's let one another know. You're close enough to perfect for me. We'll share some more things a little bit further down the road. Again, thanks for being with me.